Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We had to let Jackson Browne finish that great song, Doctors in My Eyes. Saturated Before Wet is the album, if you didn't know. A great album. Back when he was just writing about cars and women and not about social issues. So welcome, everybody. You're in the Design Build State of the Nation presentation, in case you were confused. But if you are confused, stay. It should be pretty good. Why are we doing this presentation? A lot of presentations in design build. I think you know, at around the mid-90s, especially after NDA was passed, it allowed design build within federal work, it was very prevalent. In fact, probably from 1996 and 7 to about 2015, design build was a default for the major design and construction agents, Army Corps, NAVFAC, Air Force. And it accounted for about 75% of all the work they were putting out on the street. Sometime around there, it started to shift, and it shifted to design bid build. And now design build is sitting in 2025 at about 25%. If you go across the DoD components, it's like at 24.8% or something like that of projects that are designated design build by Milcon. I use Milcon as the main yardstick. We're doing this presentation because there's going to be, I believe, and others, there's going to be resurgence in design build within the design and construction agents. And so that's why we're here. Today, we're going to have Bill Calhoun, the Vice Chair of Clark Construction. He's going to speak about industry's perspective on design build. And he'll lead things off. He's going to be followed by Dave Triplett, who's the Chief Acquisition Officer for the FBI, and the FBI right now is probably doing 90% of all their work design build, and they're adopting DBIA's design build done right. So they are a hard practitioner of design build, and Dave's going to talk about why it works and how it works, which will be great. Then Keith Hamilton, who is the Chief Engineer for NAVFAC, will come online, and Keith's going to talk about where NAVFAC wants to go with respect to design build and construction in general. And last will be Kenny Simmons, the Chief of Construction for the Army Corps of Engineers, will do the same thing. He's going to talk about where his agency wants to go. Because of, you can just tell it's Bill and I, because of some of the traveling restrictions, we're going to have Dave, Keith, and Kenny by tape. We don't want to have them live. The ability of dropping video and this and that would leave you sitting. So we've got it canned. We gave this presentation at DAU about 6 weeks ago, so we know it well, and they also know what was done before them. Now I need to go through just a little bit of housekeeping. It's interactive sessions. Here you can scan the QR code if you want to find the session. I see a lot of phones going up, so I'll pause here. Okay, housekeeping. Take note of the exits. There's 3 of them. Silence your mobile devices. That's pretty much standard now. The presentation will be available until September 1st. Download your PDHs. Thank you to Alliance, GEO, and SkyDev. Thank you for being an education sponsor. And the rules of engagement when it comes to Q&A. All 3 of the FBI, NAVFAC, and Army Corps will be live on Zoom for Q&A. We don't have to worry about presentations for that. And they're listening right now, so I have to be very careful not to say anything about them as I go forward. All right, we're going to have a screen on everybody. I'm Mike Blunt, retired NAVFAC, 8 years. Como, that's all? That's it? I know. Okay. Retired NAVFAC, CEB, 8 years with Balfour Beatty Construction, and now 9 years with AECOM. And I'm doing this for AECOM, but I'm doing it more for SAME and to push design build. I'm a member of DBIA and a member of the National Academy of Construction, and so is Bill. All right, just a level set. I have no idea the knowledge of everybody in this room, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about design bid build and design build. So design bid build is really easy. 100% plans and specs, done, thrown across the fence, a contractor bids, firm fixed price, gets the award, and goes forward. It's very effective. A lot of design and construction agents have people well trained on how to execute design, bid, build. If you take into account the Spearn doctrine, the owner is responsible for the design. And that's why design build kind of came into fashion, because what they're doing, the owner passes the liability to design to the design builder and design build. So design build, the owner will prepare bridging documents. Could be heavily bridged to 50%, which we see a lot, could be lightly bridged to 15 to 25%. Then they put those as part of the solicitation, goes across the fence, and the design builder wins the job and executes, and they are the designer of record and responsible for the design, which is a big piece of design build. Design build can be done much faster because you can get started if you fast track it while you're still doing the design. And it's been proven. There's a Pankow Institute and Construction Industry Institute paper that was put out in the late 90s, which launched design build. They revisited it a few years ago, and they basically found that still design build is a faster way to deliver. And just real quick, progressive design build, the buzzword of buzzwords right now. It's not allowed by the FAR. It's not, it's against the Brooks Act, it's against the Design Build Act. There's like 6 things. The Army Corps did a study on it, requested by Congress, but it could come soon. We got an administration that's looking for different ways to skin the cat, and I think there'll be a lot of agencies lobbying to get progressive design build in, but as of this minute, it's not allowed, mainly because you're doing some quals-based selection, doing Brooks Act type work on construction. You can't do that right now. But I wanted to mention that because it's a buzzword. In fact, NAFAC, Keith will talk about their lean design build they're working on. They had kind of named it progressive earlier, but they realized that name's already taken. And don't confuse everybody. So that's my primer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Calhoun.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. What Mike doesn't know, when I learned that I would be a panel of one, I suggested we don't really need a moderator. But Mike said, oh no, I've seen you when you have freedom to go on, you go on and you need somebody to moderate. So, but truly, thank you, Mike, for moderating and getting this panel together, and to my colleagues who are listening in. I want to thank SAME also for the session and for inviting me. And as the slide says, and you brought up Florida, so I got to say, you know, I'm a Yellow Jacket. Hopefully you saw that the School of Civil is now #1, moved up to #1 in the country, so I'm very proud of that. But I spent most of my career with Clark, most of it at 42 years, and so my perspective today is one of coming out of the private industry, a general contractor. We do both heavy civil and building work. We do about $8 billion worth of work a year. Maybe quarter to a third of that is in the heavy civil world, and the rest in vertical type of construction. So we're experiencing virtually every product there is. And we do a lot of design build work. We've been successful with design build work with each of the federal entities that are represented by the other panelists here today. So I'm going to share, I only have a few minutes, so I have 4 or 5 slides I'm going to run through real quick and really just give you my perspectives and what I think about when I think about design build. And then if there's anything in what I say that you want to delve into more, we can certainly hit it in the Q&A. So I started with, well, why design build? And I think a lot of this is obvious to a lot of people that are here, but I think first and foremost, it shortens the overall schedule. Dean Vanderlei, Admiral Vanderlei, in fact, this morning talked about, I think he was 7 to 9 years from the time a project starts and budgets until it's delivered. Well, we can shorten that schedule. And in shortening that schedule significantly, if it's performance design build, we try to shy away from bridging and overly prescriptive for a lot of reasons, because I think that if it's prescriptive and bridging, the owner entity uses up a lot of the time savings, and it misses a lot of the market ingenuity and the early feedback we can give on budget and cost, and which is the second reason. In this volatile world we live in, where we are experiencing the impacts of a hangover of COVID and supply chain impacts, and trying to do more in an unpredictable world, the earlier we have real budget input from the market, which is not just supply chain, but it's capacity of the subs, given all the other big things being done in the world today. So that earlier feedback enables you to know that you have an issue and to be solving the issue earlier. And I mentioned market creativity. With performance-related design build, we can bring market ingenuity, not just from our experience, but on the big complex work. We are going to bring in the major subs to our team, and so you get the benefit of that kind of market feedback as well. And then the fourth is not just germane to design build, and true life cycle costing is not done much in terms of consideration in the world today, certainly not in the federal acquisition scenario. But if you are a design builder and its performance, it does enable that discussion to whatever extent the agency wants to take it. We can introduce more life cycle cost analysis, but there's a different color of money between the O&M and the first cost. So again, there are some restrictions there. I like to talk about, it's not a cure-all. There are still risks to the owner organization with design build. And I think if you look at the organization behind the procuring agency or the procuring people, the stakeholders behind need to understand that they've lost some of their control of the design. A lot of it relates to the accuracy and completeness and what they put forward for the program requirements or for the basis of design that we are responding to. And I think with that goes one of the risks that often we see is not truly understood until we're in the middle of the program, and that is the stakeholders who maybe lived in a world of being able to influence the design as the design progresses now get refrained from being able to do a lot of that. And that, along with, we get design submittals that come back our way, and they may have 5,000 comments and doctor checks, and we go through all of them and we learn that there are different stakeholders who have disagreeing comments, and the owner agency didn't see the robustness of the effort they need to go through to manage their stakeholders. And this is where design build tends to be a problem, but it's a risk to an owner, and we look to, to help educate the owner, and we play a part in helping there. There are still contract risks that we all face every day. The differing site conditions is still there. Third parties that we may not have control over, but maybe they're the owner's risk, they're still present. And then with what I suggested a minute ago, with the stakeholders' ability, if they push through and try to make design changes and they slow up the design approval process and they cause us to vary from what our proposal was based on, then there are changes. They're often gray and they're difficult to resolve, but they become an issue to resolve. And then the fourth thing here is really not germane to design build. Maybe it's more important to design build because we have maybe grayer type of problems, but on any large complex job, we really try, and all of you that are in this business, it's in our best interest to resolve issues as they go. Don't yet let them accumulate and make it a big bucket of claims and disputes for the end of a job to resolve, because that's when it becomes really difficult. So those risks are still there and need to be dealt with. So when we look at a potential project to pursue as a design build project in the federal world, we look at some characteristics of the acquisition piece of it, but we also look in, which I'll talk about on the next slide, what do we think the execution piece is going to look like? And no one of these items is by itself the decision maker, but these are all things that we take into consideration as we make our decision to go forward with this design build pursuit and commit our resources. The first one is there going to be a short listing? We like there to be 3. We like there to be the project to be bigger than, I'll say $100 million. We chase $25 million design build jobs. There are reasons to do that, but generally speaking, the level of effort, the commitment of very significant resources on our part and the design team's part is generally the same level of effort for a $25 million as for $100 million. There's a lot of big work out there today. And so we generally look for a larger job. We look for the owner who's advertised they will shortlist generally to 3, and that they will make their selection based on not just low price, okay? We like there to be a stipend from the owner for the level of effort that they want. It's in everyone's best interest. Most of that money goes to the design team. The designers do real design. It's not just marketing fluff. It's real design that we need to depend on if we're going to tune in and refine a proposal and a offer to the government, and we can give more specifics with more knowledge and have less conflict later if we know what we're pricing and not just putting a parametric price together. So we want the designer to do real work. We encourage them. They need to get paid. So stipends are smart for everybody. We like there to be a process where the owner has said, once we shortlist, we will give the preferably three on the short list, we'll give you a draft RFP. Let you absorb it and comment on it. They'll take the suggestions and do what they will with it, but we'll have then an RFP to respond to that is more tuned in to what we need. It's less problematic, less RFIs, and it's a more efficient process. And then, as I said a minute ago, we're really looking for the evaluation criteria to not be best value as long as you're low. Because if it is that, and we still see a lot of that in the marketplace, it's the paradigm, it's the culture that people know. I can see if one's lower than the other. If it feels like that, you're not going to get the market ingenuity. You're not going to get the depth of commitment of resources and creativity in the design. And if we really think it's going to be that, we're probably not going to play. Because I think rush to the bottom, try to be low bidder, give the owner the least costly solution that I could possibly come up with as my interpretation of your basis of design is not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for confusion and disputes later. So again, it's a very important thing to us when we look at a go, no go. On the execution side, what we try to learn about before we say, yes, we're going to pursue a job, and this number one is probably the most important thing. We look for, much like the federal agencies have done past performance and CPARs and PPARs on us, which has created a great dynamic in our industry where we have to look at the war, not the battle. We have to be concerned with how do we finish this job, and not just did we make money, did we fulfill the contract, but how do we treat people? Do they want us again? Well, we do the same thing, okay? And I don't know if all general contractors do it, but we at Clark, we want to know who we're going to get in bed with, okay? And there's no formal process, but we call people we know. We call subs we respect. Did you work with this ROIC or with this contracting officer or this executive? And how were they? Do they know our business? Do they make decisions? Are they fair? Are they reasonable? And if I don't get some good feedback on that, then we're likely to shy away. If I get the other side of that is, they don't make decisions. You're always guilty until proven innocent. You get the other side of that, we're probably going to shy away. I don't care how strong the contract is. We don't want to get into an argument. We need to be partners. We need to collaborate. We need to recognize there's gray in this business. And as business people, we're going to solve these things together. So it's a really important characteristic of the job. We want to know that, I spoke about this a minute ago, does the owner have some understanding or appreciation of the approval process that they're going to have to go through in the management of their stakeholders? Number three is really, we look for it all big, large, complex work, is we like there to be some kind of a defined process. When there are issues, they get solved at the lowest level, they get kicked up, they don't fester. And then are there executives that are committed to the process, not involved with the day-to-day running of the project, but we'll meet monthly, quarterly, and say, how are our teams doing? Are there problems that are festering? How do we take them off the job? How do we solve them as business people and move on? We look for there to be an executive commitment from the agency to the success of the job. And then the last thing I want to get a plug in here for Design Build Institute of America. They have a great best practices for design build. Many of you probably use it. It's got great information in it, and we need to follow it as an industry, and they offer training, and I would suggest anybody who isn't familiar with it, get your teams trained. It's a great process. It's not slanted for one particular entity. It's how do we get the project success. I'll end with this. This is not what we're here to talk about today, but we're big fans of ECI, early contractor involvement. There's many different contracting, IDC, IDAC, IDBB. We've done them all. We think that this, for not every project, but for certain big complex design build work, we think this is a great form of contracting in that it really allows earlier alignment of goals, collaboration, earlier market feedback on budget and cost. And when you know you have a problem, you have a problem on cost or schedule, or availability of supply chain issues. You know them earlier so we can truly collaborate. Our interests are aligned earlier. It allows us as a contractor to look at a site and say, you know, there's a spot on this site where you have fiber optics shown or you have existing foundation shown and they're so close to a new foundation. This is something we don't want to depend on their drawings, and when we start the excavation, then we uncover the fact that it was in the wrong place. Now we have a problem and a delay. We look at the risk of differing site conditions and other risks in supply chain, and we try to say when there's enough time to solve it, to not impact the schedule, how can we go spend $1 today, do some potholes, or maybe we advance order some mechanical electrical equipment for some decisions early and then design around it so that we mitigate the impact. ECI allows us to do that. We think in ECI, if it were to be more in a incentive-based, here's my budget, and I'll incentivize the team to beat that budget. We'll have gray areas, whether they were scope changes or misunderstandings or supply chain issues, it doesn't matter. We have a project, the project budget is our goal. If we can work collaboratively and come under that budget, then if there's an incentive for that, you get everybody working in the right direction. We're not arguing about, was it your change or my change? It's how do we get it under the budget and all win? And so that's very much the way we look at ECI. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over, Mike, to my colleagues on the panel here.
Thank you, sir. So now we're going to go through our tape presentations. And if Bob Silver is at NAFAC headquarters right now listening with Keith Hamilton, Bob, this is all delivery methods are good. And really, we're pushing design build today, but DBB has its place and ECI has its place. Every delivery method has their place. Bob will get it. So our next speaker is going to be Dave Triplett. Dave is the Chief Facilities Acquisition Unit Director at the FBI, and they have made a big turnaround on implementing design build, and they've caught the attention of the Army Corps of Engineers and NAFAC. Both entities have visited them to see what they're doing. So we'll go into Dave's presentation. It'll be about 14 minutes. Dave has a lot of great things to say.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the Society of American Military Engineers for hosting this joint engineer training conference and expo. I certainly wish I could have been there with you in person at Louisville today, but this will have to do instead. I'm Dave Triplett. I'm the chief of the FBI's procurement for construction, architect and engineering services, facilities operations and maintenance, and other operational requirements for the organization. It's important to give a little bit of background about myself before I get started. I'm a contracting officer and an owner. I'm not an architect or an engineer. I have spent my 15-year career at the FBI in procurement working with architects, engineers, and customers on construction projects. I've procured and led the procurement of hundreds of construction projects in my career, from $2,000 jobs to $500 million complex campus projects using a number of different delivery methods and models, including a design bid build, done right and done wrong, and early contractor involvement. The FBI had almost exclusively used design bid build as a delivery method through the 2018 timeframe. In fact, 90% of our projects were design bid build. Fast forward to today, 90% of our work is design build. You might ask yourself why the dramatic change, and the reason is what you see on the slide here, is proof of concept. You know, my last major design bid build project, the project finished 2 years late. We had 1,000 change orders, 4,000 RFIs. The project, 350,000 square foot office building, took 3 years to design it, 5 years to build it, 8 total years. Comparatively, we just delivered the building on the bottom left-hand corner under the design build delivery model. It's a state-of-the-art cyber training facility. We did that project in 5 years. We were slated to finish sooner. However, we had a pandemic that was going on during some key points during that construction. So 5 years versus 8 years on comparable buildings. My point here is we conducted a comprehensive assessment of our projects, looking at a number of different data points, and we estimate that we've concluded a $355 million savings to the taxpayer in 20 years of time. This is comparatively to using a traditional lowest bidder model. So we have sped up project delivery, we've reduced delays, we've saved money, and we've delivered critically important projects and created a collaborative and integrated environment rather than an adversarial one. The data here is staggering, right? What's even more impressive is these figures are based on just 6 projects. Those represented via those renderings on the slide below. Just 6 projects in the last 5 years, really. We have done over 20 different projects utilizing these best practices, but just the data just supports those 6. One other thing to note on this slide is that these projects represented are really not cookie cutter buildings. In fact, we have buildings that don't exist anywhere in the world. We have an entire campus in the academic zone there in the bottom middle of the slide. We have other large complex renovation projects as well. So it's safe to say that you can't do design build for complicated build projects is really a myth that I hope to dispel here on the subsequent slides. In 2018, we made this dramatic shift to design build, and we knew that we needed to be able to seek training. So because we weren't really a mature owner in terms of that delivery model. So we brought in the Design Build Institute of America, and we conducted a three-day owners boot camp training. Really, Design Build Institute of America, or DBIA, is the resident expert in design build delivery, and they've even trademarked the term design build done right, which serves as the foundation for their universal and federal best practices. So I believe so much in DBIA that I volunteer to serve on the National Board of Directors today. It's a great organization led primarily through volunteer work. What I'm going to share with you here is really counterintuitive to everything that you've been taught in classes or you've learned or studied through on-the-job experiences. In our owners boot camp in 2018, I certainly thought that many of these things, while novel in practice, how would they actually work out? But I can tell you, if you want a premier design builder to pursue your work today, you must make your project attractive. Design builders can be selective, as we've heard firsthand, and construction is booming. Labor is hard to come by, and certainly these design build best practices following DBIA Done Right playbook will certainly make your project attractive to those great design build firms. First and foremost, disclose the budget, not the independent government cost estimate. That's against the acquisition regulations. But make price fixed. Don't incentivize cheap. When you make price variable with the disclosure of an arbitrary range, you're incentivizing low price. Most times in this scenario, which I have made these selection decisions as a source selection authority, I could not justify paying the price premium. Therefore, we went with the cheaper option. At what cost is what we asked ourselves. Disclose the budget, make price fixed in this best value design build procurement approach, and include language that states that we desire our design build partner to optimize the budget. We want to make sure that will more favorably adjudicate an offer that their proposal optimizes our scope, provides a durable, high-performing, quality facility inclusive of life cycle costs. Disclosing of the budget and that really the focus, it shifts the focus to the RFP and best proposal wins, one that includes our mission critical scope. I bet most of you here recently have worked on construction projects in the last couple of years and had budget busts. And the first thing that you do is descope, right? We include a scope prioritization matrix that really outlines our mission critical scope, highly desirable, and if possible. And that categorization really eases our evaluation. If you can get us all of our mission critical and highly desirable scope within our budget, we'll be certainly more favorably adjudicated in our evaluation. Our evaluation criteria also places a very high importance on who's your team. And we always say that we want the A team, then our evaluation criteria has price higher than the team, which you've effectively said to an offer is you can't afford the A team, or that's truly not important to you. We go so much as to say that we want certain credential holders, DBIA certified credential holders on our jobs, one that understands the design build delivery model and have expertise and experience delivering projects that have utilized those types of best practices. We conducted 2-phase design build procurement in accordance with FAR 36.3. And with that, we issue an RFQ, or request for qualifications. Phase 1, we down select to the 3 most highly qualified firms. We issue the request for proposal, or phase 2, to the the three most highly qualified firms, not more than that. Issue When we issue the phase 2 RFP, we do this so as a draft. It shows that you're willing to receive feedback and course correct. We keep that RFP in a draft phase until about 30 days before proposal due date. The big one here is that, and this is probably the best of the best practices, is conduct one-on-one proprietary meetings with the three down-selected offers who received the RFP. These are critical. If you're conducting a construction solicitation today and sending out maybe under a design bid build delivery model or a design build solicitation and having one-way static exchanges of information via site visit and answering all your RFI questions in writing and wondering why the proposals you received missed the mark, then it's because you weren't willing to listen and conduct these one-on-one meetings. We conduct 3 rounds over 60 to 90 day period, where we ask each of the offers, is our scope, schedule, and budget achievable? Is there anything in the solicitation that is unnecessarily driving cost, risk, or performance? We give feedback to the design concepts, essentially giving offers those boundaries, not saying we like this or we don't like that, but saying that you should confirm the engineering here, or did you look at that requirement there? The beauty of these is we generally know what we're getting whenever proposals come in. We have been blown away with offer presentations wherein by the 3rd round of meetings, we're seeing fully advanced models, 3D models, and the day in the life of an operator or a person who will occupy the space. Certainly, again, here, I highly recommend a DBIA to come into your organization, conduct an owner's boot camp, or engage in specialized training that DBIA offers that's more relatable to maybe you or your level of maturity as an organization with a design build delivery model. We continue to bring in refresher trainings every other year to keep our skills sharp. But really, here, what I want to emphasize is it's really a focus on minimizing prescriptive and maximizing performance-based requirements. Agencies will have to look at certain things that are non-negotiable, and it's okay to include those types of things. It's also okay to question, why does it have to be that make or model? I'll give you a particular example. We're constructing a central utility plant as a part of one of our projects, and building control systems comes up quite often. As what do you typically hear from facilities managers is, I don't want to manage multiple systems. It has to be an Acme type system, rather than what I'm saying is, rather than explicitly calling out Acme systems, say instead the requirement is for a building operations systems that is interoperable with existing government systems, minimizing the amount of additional training and maintenance costs to manage multiple disparate non-integrated systems. You're effectively here not saying explicitly that it has to be a particular make, model, or manufacturer system, but you're saying that it has to operate, it has to be interoperable with one another. It has to be able to function if you have multiple disparate systems. So also, the key here is to limit the lines on paper. You might hear the term bridging documents. I would argue you don't need any bridging documents if you've appropriately defined your problem set. It was said earlier, design build gets a bad reputation when you pay for bridging documents only to throw them out whenever you award a design build project, because essentially with a set of bridging documents or a design that is advanced to a certain level that is then put out for bid, is that you are signaling to offers and to industry that this is what you want and that you're not open to alternative design concepts or solutions. The RFP also should appropriately allocate risk. For example, many experts in trade policy infer that we're in a trade war today, and you should consider that risk in your construction solicitation and potentially consider, as we have, the use of an economic price adjustment clause. Given the 2 massive benefits of design build are transfer of design and construction risk to one entity, and price certainty at the time of award, really to achieve these benefits with design build, it comes with risk and contractors price risk. In order to reduce that cost of risk to the owner for price uncertainty with a trade war, you got to be willing to include these types of economic price adjustment clauses or other relief to give contractors some offering for something that's beyond the control of both parties. In the pre-award phase, in the RFP, pay a stipend to the unsuccessful offers. That's the two unsuccessful offers. We pay a 0.5% to 1% of our budget for the level of effort that design builders are going to put into pursuit to chase your work. Refer to OMB Circular A11. It was updated in July of 2024 for reasons why you can and should do so. In the RFP, you should also include a reservation of right to incorporate an award fee plan post-award. The first modification to the contract should be the inclusion of this award fee plan with feedback from the design builder to ensure that we're incentivizing the right things. 1% of contingency is placed on the award fee plan in our model. The return on investment that we've got is staggering. And that comes as cost avoidance and extended general conditions. Lastly, remember, design in a design build following these best practices is a deliverable post-award. And it hasn't been created at the time of award. So a design builder is the QA and QC, but clear expectations on the roles that the government team plays in things like security inspections and wall inspections prior to closing, or authority having jurisdiction expectations are all critically important in project management. So thank you for having me. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Dave. Dave can hear us, so thank you, Dave. And he has really taken the FBI very far, and like I said, other agencies are paying attention to the work that they're doing. Our next speaker, as I mentioned earlier, is NAVFAC. It's Mr. Keith Hamilton, the chief engineer. You can see his fun facts. Dave had some. I put him in the wrong presentation, but Dave is a mountaineer. That's his big thing. He loves hiking, and he wants to visit every country in the world. So I didn't get those on the slide. Keith, you can see, is a Mizzou Tiger. We'll forgive him for that. And he loves about everything. Great guy. So here's Keith. Dave was about 14 minutes. Keith's going to be about 7 minutes. And then I believe that Kenny will be about 7 minutes to leave us some time for some questions.
Sorry I'm unable to be with you in person today, but I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk to you about NAVFAC's current design build program and the changes and improvements we're implementing to make it more effective and impactful for execution of our military construction program. This chart shows the proportion of our total military construction program that was executed using a design build delivery method versus a design bid build method by number of projects over the past 4 years. We don't establish specific targets for the number or proportion of design build projects that we execute each year, but rather we base the choice of delivery method on other factors such as project complexity, tolerance for variability or deviation from prescriptive standards, schedules, and resourcing considerations. Over the last 4-year period, on average, we've delivered about 43% of our MilCon projects valued at about $3.7 billion a year through design build delivery methods. A little more than half, or consistently more than about $2 billion a year of that, has been executed through A&E design build RFP development, and the balance of the RFPs were developed in-house. As we look to the future, we expect to deliver a larger number of our projects through design build methods for a variety of reasons, including resource constraints, the desire to more rapidly adopt industry best practices and speed delivery, and in some cases, increase the standardization of design using a design build site adapt approach. The design build approach that we often use today is based on RFPs with more mature level of design, such as 35%, and more well-defined requirements and higher levels of specificity. We tend to use it more often for smaller projects and projects that are non-complex. We also use it for some of our more standard designs or repetitive facility types, some of which have prescriptive UFCs that we follow, and some of which use standardized design model RFP templates that we've developed. For example, our standard design RFP templates include repetitive facility types such as market-style unaccompanied housing, Marine Corps barracks, dining facilities, child development centers, fitness centers, fire stations, armories, and hangars. These standard design RFP templates allow for site adaptation for the specific geographical locations and tailoring to unique customer requirements. We also favor design build strategies when it's important to accelerate contract award. We've had great success with the design build strategies for large disaster recovery projects that require immediate action to restore essential facilities and capability to an installation or a region that suffered hurricane or earthquake damage. We found that our current design build processes tend to be more prescriptive than we intend to use in the future. And as a result, we're not getting the full benefit of introducing innovation and incorporating industry best practices that can be achieved through the design build methodology that we are applying today. So as we look to the future, we've developed a strategy that we call Lean Design Build. Lean Design Build is more closely aligned to industry best practices for design build delivery methods. It's much more performance-based with limited prescriptive requirements used in the design build RFP, and it's tended to use a low maturity of design, generally about 15%. Rather than achieving budget certainty through higher levels of design maturity and specificity, we plan to monitor and control project costs through the design and construction process by specifying the target budget and using a design build to budget strategy for execution. We would expect to use source selection criteria that more heavily weight technical proposals over price, and we are particularly looking for innovation that drives costs down and increases the speed of project delivery. We will apply strong governance throughout the project design and construction process to prevent cost growth during execution. This approach is particularly suitable for facilities that fall into that standard design facility type of RFP that I mentioned earlier. And we also look for it where we can start the process using that conceptual design for the functional use, the layout of the facility, while we allow the detailed design to be developed with the active involvement of the constructor, starting from the earliest stage of application of innovation and best practices that reduce cost and speed project delivery. We've used this type of design build process in the past in various instances and specific locations. In the future, we plan to increase the use of this delivery method, including the application of fast-track design build project delivery as a more deliberate strategy for the appropriate project types across the enterprise. We're also looking hard at other alternative delivery methods that we believe can incorporate innovation, drive down cost, and speed project delivery. Although we currently have statutory impediments preventing the adoption of many delivery methods used in the private sector, we have a number of initiatives underway to be able to apply alternative delivery methods such as progressive design build and construction manager at risk with a guaranteed maximum price. We believe the lean design build process gets us closer to a progressive design build approach, about as close as we can get today with the existing authorities. But we're seeking statutory changes that would allow us to get much closer to a private sector style progressive design bid methodology in the future. NAVFAC is also prototyping design and construction delivery using other transactional authority. Other transactional authority provides a legal framework for a non-FAR agreement that is much more flexible and really allows for an interactive engagement between the government, designer, and constructor that encourages innovation and optimization of project objectives throughout an integrated design build process. We have a pilot project underway today to construct a child development center using industrialized construction approaches, and we're working towards being able to tailor the standard scalable child development center design we've established to take advantage of the economies of scale that can be achieved with industrialized construction applied to multiple facilities through use of this type of process. Thank you very much for the time to talk to you about NAVFAC's design build processes and the way that we plan to change them going forward, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Keith. Our last presenter is Kenny Simmons. Kenny is the Chief of Construction for Army Corps Headquarters. The big thing on his fun facts is Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and the fact that his college roommate is in the audience here. So I think that's pretty important. In fact, he said he'll pass stories about Kenny afterwards if you just find him. And with that, we'll close out with Kenny, and then we'll get into Q&A.
Hey, good afternoon. Kenny Simmons, Chief of Construction for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm based out of Washington, D.C. I wish I could be there with you all today. Thanks for your support to SAME and the Joint Engineer and Training Conference. I also want to say thanks to Mike Blunt for pulling this together. He reached out a few months ago and asked for some support on design build. And I said, hey, man, we're going through an evolution in the Corps. And he said, perfect. That's what I want to talk about. So one of the benefits of going last in a presentation is I could say, hey, I agree with what everyone before me said. And I really do. I think you've heard some great perspectives here from a couple other design and construction agents, as well as our industry partners. And so I'm going to pull the thread a little bit on some, philosophical commentary and where the Corps is starting to head. I don't want to PowerPoint you to death with a lot of bullets. So this is a little more of a conversation. And then I look forward to the Q&A that'll take place after this. Just a little background. I am an architect. Please save those good jokes for the actual live Q&A. I did some private sector time before I came to the Army Corps of Engineers about 16 years ago, where I started in the Kansas City district, focused primarily on vertical construction. But now at the headquarters, I've got the good blessing and fortune to have some insight over everything that the Army Corps of Engineers is doing. And just saying on the screen there, cover slide is a design build project out of St. Louis that's wrapping up. And that was like the last, what I like to joke is real work I did when I was in a district office before I came to our headquarters. And I also want to note the logo on the cover slide here, June 16th, mark your calendars, about a month away, is the Army Corps of Engineers 250th birthday. So let's talk a little bit about where the Corps is heading with design build. I want to highlight just an ever expanding mission set of about $90 billion on the books. And there's ample opportunity here. We've got kind of three buckets on the screen of our sort of Department of Army authorities, the DoD work we do, but then the bottom line is also our international and interagency services. There are other federal clients that come to the Corps to do design build, where we're doing a lot of focus on design build, and the IIS world is our partners at the Department of Veterans Affairs. So keep an eye out for some of that work. One message I want to send for those of you in the room that are either private sector or government employees, many of our stakeholders have experience delivering design and construction and support the use of alternative delivery methods. And as a procurement leader, and I can everybody in the room on the screen, a leader in procurement, you've got to make sure you're balancing the type of work, the capability of your design and construction agent, and the stakeholder capability and industry capability to deliver what you're looking at. Don't always assume that everybody just totally understands what's going on and that they understand all the details. So please make sure, there's an educational aspect to any conversations with your government partners or your industry partners in delivering design build. It's something we reaffirm with our staff on a regular basis. There is no perfect acquisition method for every program, right? So it's important that we, as a federal design and construction agent, avoid doing what we've always done. Just because you did bid build before and it was perfect doesn't mean that the project today is going to be perfect. Similarly, if design build, you've got to make sure that you're building the right request for proposal and communicating with industry appropriately, similar to what the previous presenters commented on. And we just got to make sure that we're selecting the most appropriate acquisition method for the technical requirement. And I'm here to tell you that there are many, many more uses for design build than one might think. In USACE, our numbers are similar to NAVFAC for vertical construction. It's about 2/3 design bid build and 1/3 design build. It's always an ebb and flow based off of the requirements and timing. About a decade ago during military transformation, we were actually peaking around 40 to 42% on design build. Our civil works mission is unique. If we're impounding water, levees and dams, there's a likelihood that we're going to maintain designer of record authority in-house. But please dismiss the idea that design build is not appropriate for civil works. There's many other features of work that are appropriate. There's a lot of risk to manage, but I want to talk about that briefly in our portfolio. So, I stole some graphics here from actually one of our dam safety engineer regulations about risk-based design. And while, generally speaking, we always think of risk of like these negative things, right? Damages and consequence. And there's always a light of something that you have to avoid. And I think the purists would tell you, but there's also risk that can be positive to a project. What I put on the screen, starting top left and then just working clockwise. There's a pump station from New Orleans, a part of our Katrina efforts. There's 2 hospitals that were very successful through our recapitalization of military medical facilities, and then also a large flood wall. And that doesn't mean that these are the only 4 types of projects that you can do, but there's a significant amount of technical risk and a lot of potential for design solutions in these. And if you look at that red block in the bottom left, I want to really push to everyone in the room, as I'm pushing to people within the Corps of Engineers, look at your desired end state through a technical lens. If you can live with some options and technical solutions, then design build is a great tool as we tap into industry and understand, what innovative ideas they may have as we open up the playbook for what's the art of the possible and where we can take our design solutions. Our industry partners are very capable of managing technical risk and working between, the constructor and the designer, any subcontractor partners and folks that work on fabrication or in the supply chain, but also with our stakeholders as well to really deliver the performance that we require. I want to talk a little bit more on how we're looking to manage risk. And I said hold the jokes for being an architect until the very end. There might be a couple right now because you're going, I just paid to come to a conference and somebody used a smart art tool and PowerPoint in their presentation. Okay, so I totally stole this from one of the training slides that we use in the Army Corps of Engineers, but I am trying to drive at some back to the basics activities here for you. So for our agency, we have numerous highly technical efforts with national significance. And while there is an angle that things are unique and special and different, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to control all of the technical solutions or contractors' means and methods in what we do. And so you heard Bill talk about being performance oriented. You've heard about different procedures to do things like design, build to budget, and working with industry through acquisition processes. This can be a paradigm shift for your agencies. And for those of you in the private sector, I'd ask that you bring these types of things up when you engage with your government design and construction agents at industry days or for any other line item reviews or project reviews that you see between the government and our industry partners. I really want to foot stomp, define those legitimate requirements, talk about preferences, talk about betterments, make your intentions clear in the procurement. How often have you heard that as a fundamental? Make it clear what you're trying to do. These are things that we're trying to reorient, our teams on through the design build strategies. Make sure you identify those criteria and standards, but don't tell folks what the solution is. If some of you are thinking, I want it that way, that's okay. You can be specific, but don't overburden your industry partners and limit the innovation. I really got to echo again what Bill said about being performance-based. Define that goal. Do you want to drive yourself or take a taxi? You're going to get to the same place, right? But you're letting things go when you go the taxi route. You can also let some control go when you go the design build route. And I really encourage everybody to do that. And then just take advantage of your RFP components. If you want to be very specific in how you want to engage between industry and our stakeholders through the down select process, you should absolutely do that. Doesn't mean that it has to be the traditional throw an RFP over the fence and then wait for bid day to talk to anybody. There's got to be a lot of engagement. I think you heard that coming from the FBI, that there's a process here where we engage with one another. And then lastly, the Corps is still like really, really focused on partnerships. This image actually comes from some of the work we did in Maui, and you see the traditional USACE QA rep with the white hard hat and red stripe, and one of our industry partners, right? And sometimes we think about partnering and relationships as like a construction thing. Well, we got to really embrace one another in the pre-award phases as well. And today, more than ever, I think with the environment that we're faced with an ever expanding portfolio and challenges in industry as well as we fight for talent and get the proper acquisitions out there. This is a very technical industry, but it's a people business. I mentioned having worked in the private sector before, civil service. I truly understand both sides of the fence and have a sincere respect for all of you that are in the room, whether you're a federal or state, local government, or an industry partner. We can build a lot more trust and relationships between the AEC industry and our federal design and construction agents by utilizing procurement methods like design build. And so I hope that today kind of meets your needs on what you're hoping to hear from the federal design and construction agents. Our success and our collaboration is going to be essential to the delivery of much needed infrastructure in the federal government. So I'll look forward to some of the Q&A here, and I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Well, thank you. I'd like to, real quick, thank Bill Calhoun for being here in person, so I didn't have to do it myself. And our three executives who taped themselves and got the tapes in when we learned they couldn't travel. The main purpose of this presentation is kind of a warning shot to everybody that design build is probably going to come back in fashion with our design and construction agents, and be prepared. And you may see things more like design build to budget, in which really price is isolated and not a factor, and the solution is a factor. But you'll see all kinds of different variations come forward, and be well prepared. And now I believe we have Kenny, Keith, and Dave online, and Bill's here. Questions?
Hello? Okay.
You gotcha.
Hi, my name is Lena Tamaye. So I support NAVFAC. Specifically, I support NAVFAC, Mariana CIO, and PAC PW8. So I interface with NAVFAC Design and Construction to give CIO and PW requirements. I'm a fan of design build, but one of the problems I think everyone expressed is making sure we have a really good RFP, and making sure we don't need design changes and contract mods later on down the road. Something that I've experienced while working with NAVFAC Design and Construction is having some inexperienced folks who are developing the RFPs. So if we go down this route of doing more design build, is there any push to train or educate the folks developing the RFPs?
That's a great question. I'll do a test of the ether here to see if Kenny or Keith would like, one, did they hear it? And two, would they like to respond?
Yeah, this is Keith Hamilton. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's a good point. I think one of the things, as Mike emphasized early in the discussion today, we have used a lot more design build in the past, and we have reduced the amount of design build we're doing today. And in certain locations, depending on the specific kinds of projects that are being done or the capabilities of the office, some may be using more or less design build. But one thing that we definitely recognize is the approaches to delivering a design build project requires some different distribution of talent in the delivery team for the government, and certainly some training. So we recognize that going into the process. We recognize we have to be a lot more focused on post-award activities in design build projects. And we're beginning that process now to develop the kind of reconfiguration of our staff and the training to help enable greater success with the increased amount of design build we expect to do in the future.
Thank you, Keith. Any other questions? I know we had a lot of details, so you may not have questions. We answered everything. Admiral Kubik.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question. You know, decades ago, you've probably heard this before, in the early 80s, NAVFAC was executing 100% of its MILCON program in the program year using design bid build. But there were some distinctly different ways that was done. We would basically have our A&Es kind of characterized. We picked A&Es quickly when we got design instructions. We had sometimes a concept session ahead of time, but mostly We got the clients together, we talked about it, made sure we understand its scope, criteria, and functionality. And then we pressed on to 35% design, which was really 50% of the effort. At that point in time, from the client standpoint, the using agency, that was their time to review to make sure we were in compliance with scope, criteria, functionality. I got into a thing with the Air Force where they were checking the rebar and the footings. And I said, well, that's my job, but if you're going to do it, I just won't do it. You know, I'll just let you be responsible for that. And they certainly backed off. So the reviews went much quicker. And then we would press on to 95%, which was defined as when the A&E was done with the design, but we still needed to now have a more intense review. And that's the point in time where we brought in the constructors and people that were in-house to do constructability review. And then we had the thing poised and ready to go as soon as we got the money. So we moved through it faster. So let's maybe take a look at, is it the method we're using or how we're managing the process and who's contributing at what time and how much, and the ultimate responsibility lies on the designer of record in any case. And so my sense now is sometimes we will go through 5 different reviews on a design build job where we get 50 or 60 comments and people are getting very, very picky, and it just slows the process down. So I'm wondering if when we're looking at this, do we really think that design build or any of these other methods will get us done quicker if we don't moderate the behavior of the design reviews and who's responsible for what at what stage?
Roger, so that was a comment, not a question, and I'll take it as that. Because I could go on for a half hour, and we'll do this later. Admiral Hanley, you had a question, you backed off. Get on up here.
Mike, can I make a comment on the comment before Mark talks?
Yes, sir.
Admiral Nash, I'm guessing 25 plus or minus years ago, did 2 procurements, which were, I would say, almost forms of early contractor involvement. It was the Pensacola Flight Training School, and it was the nuke training in Charleston. And he down selected to 3 contractors. During the design development, we had to come to the table with our peers at the table. We had to update the budget and the schedule, and we had to bring forward any of our design review comments. And that when the project design was finished, it was then bid out. We knew it was limited to just the 3 of us. We knew that our competitors knew the job. They weren't going to be a low bid because they didn't know what they were getting into. We all conversed along the way, so we knew each other, so we hit it really hard. And then there was a best value source selection. And I just cite that as a very early form that I think starts to pick away at some of the issues that you talked about.
Sir.
You know, I think Admiral Kubrick brought up a good point because I think it goes back to how are we training our workforce to understand design build. And my question is really for you, Bill, but in your discussions, you talked about being strategic in picking the projects you do. And one of the things you do is you evaluate the contract and the government team is how good are they at, and you kind of talked about it as partnering, are they easy to work with, but I also think is how well do they understand design build? And I think that goes to your question, Admiral Kubrick, is how well do they understand design build? I think it's very strategic for you to do that evaluation. My real question for you is how, or have you been able to find a way to provide that feedback to the right level within the government that, hey, we're not going to work with that office because they don't understand design build and they probably need more training. I know that's a touchy one because you want to keep good partnership at every level within the government or everyone in the client side, but I'm just curious if you've thought through how you might do that.
Yeah, it's a touchy answer, touchy question. I think we would be forthright if the environment was such where the procuring agency wanted to hear that. Typically, when we make a decision to not pursue a job, and some of the answer to that is part of the reason, the procurement would still go on, so it's not appropriate to share that at that time. I think very much dependent upon the level of personal relationships we have, and at a very top level. I would think nothing about after a procurement's done, sitting down if Admiral Vanderlei wanted, or one of the admirals that run one of the divisions wanted to talk about it. I would be happy to talk about it. We don't generally volunteer it because it generally gets into an area where I don't know where these people are headed in their life, and I don't want to make enemies. I think it's a great thought for all of us. I have expressed for many years kind of, half kidding but half serious and wanting somebody in the federal government to pick this up, which is allow us as the design and construction community to fill out a form like the past performance form, have a very templated form that's on every job, whether you do it at halfway point or the end of the job, and let us fill out, the characteristics of the people that were administering our work from the government point of view, from the government's position. And that the dynamic that would create would be the federal government people would have a vested interest in the outcome. Now, that doesn't mean they're giving away the farm, but theoretically, if that becomes knowledgeable, we do this kind of informally, and I will shy away from a bid. Well, if it's a little more formal and people in the agency know that they're either going to get bids or they're not going to get bids and it's going to be visible, I would hope that they monitor how they conduct themselves every day. Are we being fair and reasonable with one another, or aren't we? And I think that would create a dynamic that would begin to chip away at this.
Yeah, and it's a hot topic that usually comes up when you talk about CPARs, is can we do a reverse CPARs and evaluate our government folks on management, quality, schedule, and such. And speaking of CPARs, a commercial today at 1630 L104. It will be like peanut butter and chocolate. CPARs and partnering go together. I'll be back on stage again with some really bright government folks to talk about that, and we'll be giving out Hershey peanut butter cups to the first 25 who come in the door. How about another big hand for all our presenters and the folks in the ether? And if you see Belle Fabrero walking around, she had to do a shift and change to all live, to live and tape. She came up with getting these folks overhead through Zoom at the end. Our electronic guys were unbelievable. It worked. So thank you all for coming.